The massive transport ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like wounded birds falling from the sky. Inside the largest vessel, Commander of the pressed her face against the observation window and watched the blue planet grow larger. Her four eyes carried the weight of everything she had witnessed in the past 3 months. Behind her, 40,000 of her people sat in silence. Children clung to their mothers. Elderly citizens whispered prayers to gods they no longer believed could hear them. They had lost everything. Their home world of 7 burned under the weapons of the Empire. Their military had been destroyed in 17 days. Their cities had become ash and memory. When the Galactic Council offered them sanctuary, they had expected to be sent to one of the established refugee worlds. Instead, they received coordinates for a planet called Earth. Had never heard of it, neither had anyone else on the ships. The council representative who delivered the news had worn an expression of poorly hidden amusement. Earth was a young world, he explained. The humans had only achieved space travel 50 years ago. They were primitive by galactic standards. They had no experience with refugees. They had no established camps or protocols. But they had volunteered. The representative had laughed after the transmission ended, understood why. Throughout the galaxy, refugee camps were places of suffering. Beings were processed like cargo. They received minimal food, minimal shelter, and maximum surveillance. Some species viewed refugees as threats. Others viewed them as cheap labor. A few viewed them as entertainment. They had prepared themselves for the worst. As the transport ships broke through the clouds, saw a massive gathering below. Thousands upon thousands of ground vehicles surrounded the landing zone. Her heart sank. Military response. Of course. The humans wanted to contain them immediately. The ships touched down with a gentle rumble, gathered her command staff and prepared to face whatever waited outside. She had instructed her people to remain calm, to cooperate with any demands, to show no resistance. Survival meant submission. That was the reality of being a refugee in this galaxy. The main hatch opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Stepped out first, as tradition demanded. The sunlight of this strange world temporarily blinded her, and she raised a hand to shield her eyes. When her vision cleared, she stopped walking. She could not understand what she was seeing. The vehicles were not military transports. They were personal conveyances of every shape and color, and the beings emerging from them were not soldiers. They were ordinary people, families, children, elderly individuals with kind faces. They carried blankets and containers of food and signs covered in writing she could not read. A small human female approached. The child could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old by human measurements. She held a stuffed animal in one hand and extended it toward the commander with a shy smile. Did not know how to respond. In her language, she asked the child what she wanted. A human male stepped forward. He wore a device around his neck that pulsed with blue light. When he spoke, his words emerged in perfect. "Welcome to Earth. We are here to help you." The words struck like a physical blow. She had received many greetings in her military career. None had ever included those final 5 words. The translation device belonged to the human government. Teams of linguists had worked through the night to program it after receiving the language files. The male explained that his name was James. He was a volunteer coordinator for the Refugee Welcome Program. Asked about the camps, James looked confused. He exchanged glances with several other humans before responding. There were no camps. They would be housed in actual homes. Families across the planet had opened their doors. Communities had prepared apartments and houses. Schools had created enrollment programs for the children. Medical centers had studied physiology to provide proper care. Restaurants had learned to prepare compatible meals. Asked him to repeat himself. She was certain the translation device had malfunctioned. It had not. The first wave of emerged from the transport ships. They moved slowly, cautiously, expecting weapons to appear at any moment. Instead, They were met with smiles and waves and offers of assistance. Human children gave toys to children. Human adults offered blankets and warm drinks. Volunteers guided the refugees toward waiting vehicles that would take them to their new homes. A young mother named walked through the crowd with her infant daughter pressed against her chest. She had not slept properly in weeks. The child had been born during the escape from Seven, in a cargo hold filled with smoke and screaming. Had expected to raise her daughter in a refugee camp, surrounded by wire fences and armed guards. A human woman approached her. The woman had gray hair and gentle eyes. Through a translation device, she introduced herself as she had lost her own daughter to illness many years ago. Her house had an empty room that had remained untouched for decades. She wanted to know if and her child would like to stay with her. Did not understand. She asked if she would be required to work. She asked if there were rules she must follow. She asked what she would owe in return. His answer was simple. She wanted nothing. She simply wished to help. The elderly were taken to care facilities where medical staff had prepared specialized treatment rooms. The injured were transported to hospitals where human doctors worked alongside alien medical data to provide care. The traumatized were connected with counselors who had trained specifically for this moment. Not one was placed in a detention center. Not one was separated from their family. Not one was asked to prove their worth or justify their existence. Commander remained at the landing zone until the last refugee had been processed. James stayed with her, answering her endless questions with patience that seemed impossible to break. She asked him why. Why had the humans done this? What did they gain from helping strangers from the other side of the galaxy? James considered the question for a long time before responding. He told her about human history. He told her about the wars and the suffering and the mistakes that his species had made over thousands of years. He told her about the refugee crises that had shaped their world. He told her about the children who had drowned in oceans while seeking safety, about the families that had been torn apart at borders, about the camps where disease and despair had claimed countless lives. Humans knew what it meant to be displaced. Humans knew what it meant to lose everything. Humans knew what it meant to arrive in a strange land with nothing but hope. And humans had decided long ago that they would do better, not because they were required to, not because they expected something in return, but because it was right. Felt something wet on her face. She touched her cheek and discovered that she was crying. She had not cried since the day her home world fell. James placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was warm and solid and real. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched with growing disbelief. News reports spread across 1,000 worlds. A primitive species from an unremarkable planet had done the impossible. They had treated refugees as people rather than problems. They had opened their homes and their hearts without hesitation. The Galactic Council demanded an explanation. Surely the humans wanted something. Surely there was a hidden agenda. Surely this was some form of elaborate manipulation. Earth's representative to the Council, a woman named Dr. Sarah, delivered a response that was broadcast across every inhabited system. Her words were simple. Compassion was not complicated. Kindness was not a transaction. When beings suffered, the proper response was to help them. This was not remarkable. This was basic. This was what civilization meant. The council members did not know how to respond. Such ideas were considered naive in galactic politics. Empathy was weakness. Generosity was foolish. Success was measured in resources accumulated and enemies destroyed. Yet here was a species that operated on entirely different principles. And somehow, against all logic, they were thriving. On Earth, they began to rebuild. Children learned human languages and made human friends. Adults found employment and started businesses. Artists created works that blended tradition with human innovation. Scientists collaborated on research projects that advanced both civilizations. daughter spoke her first word in a house filled with warmth and laughter. The word was Mama, spoken in perfect English, because it had been teaching her while recovered from her trauma. Commander accepted a position with Earth's newly formed Galactic Relations Department. Her experience and knowledge made her invaluable. Her gratitude made her loyal beyond measure. She had commanded fleets and led armies, but nothing in her long career compared to the honor of working alongside humans. The universe had taught her that survival required strength. Earth taught her that strength could be gentle. 3 years after the arrival of the refugees, the Empire sent ambassadors to Earth. They wished to establish diplomatic relations with this curious species that had made such waves across the galaxy. The humans received them with the same warmth they had shown They offered food and comfortable accommodations and genuine hospitality. The ambassadors were confused. Earth knew what their empire had done. Earth sheltered the survivors of violence, yet there was no hostility, no demands for justice, no threats of retaliation. Doctor met with the ambassadors personally. She explained that humans did not forget the past, but they also did not allow the past to dictate the future. They had been welcomed not as victims of but simply as beings in need. If they ever found themselves in similar circumstances, Earth would welcome them as well. The ambassadors returned to their empire with a report that sparked intense debate among their leaders. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had defeated civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. Yet this small blue planet had accomplished something their entire empire could not. They had made the galaxy pay attention without firing a single weapon. They called Earth by a new name in their language. It translated roughly to the place where kindness lives. The name spread. Other species began using it. Refugees from a dozen different conflicts requested transport to the human. Earth could not accommodate everyone. Resources were limited, space was finite, but they tried, they always tried. And in trying, they changed everything. The galaxy had believed that power came from conquest. Humans proved that power could come from compassion. The galaxy had believed that strangers were threats. Humans proved that strangers were opportunities. The galaxy had believed that kindness was weakness. Humans proved that kindness was the strongest force in the universe. 40,000 refugees had expected camps. They received homes. They expected suspicion. They received trust. They expected to be forgotten. They became family. And the world that welcomed them would never be the same.